Hello and welcome everyone, it is me, the Level, also back for you with mostly Morphtronics Ranked. I've not been playing a whole lot of Master Duel, as you can probably tell by me low gold ranks. But hopefully that will change soon enough once this whole banless fiasco blows over. I do still have a couple of replays that I did want to share with you guys, so let's get into the first one that will start a very cool trend for this video. Starting off with a very simple one here. This one's actually very old by now, because this is from the start of last month, actually. Opponent is going to go first, which is why I'm probably going to handy dandy speed up button here. And as you can probably tell already by a dark summoning for a opening of the spirit gates hitting the board, we are facing Yubel, which is actually what I am facing for all three of these replays. Because if there's one thing in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That is a lot of fun, then it is bullying people on actually good decks with bad decks. Hand you are seeing at the bottom here, probably nothing too out of the ordinary. You know, these are all fairly normal cards. But this thrust is going to, you know, let's just wait and see what happens. We're looking at like a fairly standard Yubel setup. I think you can maybe do like a bit more with this in Master Duel. But we have the Escape of the Unchained set, which my opponent is going to fire on the normal summon of Saffron, triggering the Unchained Soul Lord of Yama in the grave to revive the Soul of Rage, which will also trigger to attempt and add back Kavara. But once again, one of the greatest cards that is currently still, for some reason, legal. Each time that this thing is used as like DD Crow on steroids, I'm like, maybe Core Buy is a bit too much. But we triple Tactics Thrust for Machina redeployment. Yeah, it's a bit silly. We grab Fortress and Citadel here. Great duo to grab off of that card, since Fortress is just a 3/7 body that way, and Citadel does Citadel things and gets in rotation, which is kind of cool. Especially in a deck that is already mainly full of very easily popped Earth Machine monsters. As you can see, I am putting this Fortress on the board by simply pitching that Citadel to make an Exhaustion Crusader's Dragon. I all know where this is going. The Exhaustion Crusader's Dragon will activate, bringing back this copy of Morphtronic Smartphone, which is going to roll a die, finding a Southbound at the top, which we are quickly going to turn those power to Raver Dragon, also very point. I do immediately try and get rid of the Mature Chronicle on the board, because I don't want the opponent to be able to search a super polymerization on the follow-up, which could rather easily crack my board here, and decide on using Raptorness as an extender. Looks weird, and realistically also is a bit weird. Could have just simply summoned Raver back in defense already. Don't hit anything off the Southbound that I recur off a telephone here, so this is simply going to be turning into an SP Little Knight. But SP does a great job here at during the opening of the Spirit Gates, which does put my opponent a whole lot less follow-up than they'd otherwise be working with. Opponent is simply going to link those away into a Muckracker, yes. Turning those Yubels into Sender. I do kind of miss the mark here. Decide to not hit the Muckracker for some reason, and the Braver now just casually gets blanked by the Soul of Yubel. I do decide to SP Little Knight the Yubel off the board here, so my Phantom that, but they can still pop from deck, you know, get a Yubel out of that way. Muckracker here in the end phase prevents you up. But yeah, pretty gummy board state. Do decide to put the Saffron on the board here. Not a whole lot of like easy ways to get that off the field. Kind of just digging triggers here. I just pop the Yubel. Opponent goes into another Terror Incarnate. I don't think that's like, oh, that's a recycled one. For a moment I was very confused about the multiple Terror Incarnates. I mean, seeing Ultimate Nightmare at like the start of the duel was pretty kind of crazy. Do decide to Southbound and SP here into the turn. Raver go here. get Markina Citadel back on the board once my opponent passes back to me. And from here we are, in a position where we do have quite an easy time game. Selphon does miss once again. For anyone questioning why this idiot hasn't fired the redeployment, he finally does it here. I do add an Ankla Spar and an Overdrive, noticeably not summoning the Ankla Spar, as that would lock me machines, because once again we are link summoning the most important link created in the history of this game, which is going to be Underworld God of the Closed World. Underworld Goddess and Citadel get to hit in here. I do get to set the Overdrive, which I believe I even still have a target for in... oh no, I actually don't have a target for that. But, opponent doesn't have to know that. And apparently this board is too much for my opponent to deal with. But yeah, with that victory secured, we move into the one outlier for this episode. Which I hope you can all bear with. At least it's, a classic example of reading. And with that, we move in to game number 2, which I am going first. And as you can see by my opener, I am still in, something that could be in a household, but this time kitchen. Getting max seed on Culinary Confrontation is not great. I was hoping to maybe fish for an Ash that way, so that the pre-prep doesn't get ashed. And then I'm like, okay, at least I turn off Imperm. And then they have Veiler. So, not great. But at least we can still pre-prep for, everything we need here with a Poissonniere on the board. And at least getting in able already pretty solid. For the ones uninitiated with French cuisine, I guess, as a deck. This is pretty cool because if you ritual summon the Berea base with the fish recipe, add meat recipe for free, which is kind of nice. Poissonniere rescales herself, and the Berea base trying to find a Nouvelle card. 5. Restaurant is a very crazy pick because that way I get access to the counter trap and kind of just not keep extending into this maxi, which is the main point, because I don't want to amp my many draws. I do still decide to tag out into a Peltis for the additional draw, mainly just so I'm not completely behind on the resources. I'm kind of just filtering through my deck here, putting the Hungry Burger back, trying to get another draw, and maybe finding a hand trap. Pop by the Grave is a crazy one, and Ash Blossoms an even crazier draw here, as my opponent goes to draw for their turn. Goes to lead, opening of the Spirit Gates, decide to let that fly, and on the Summon of Dark Beckoning Ash, which I feel like is perfectly fine because my opponent lacks the extender here. They are probably not getting to anything relevant, and yeah, the second Dark Beckoning the board. Unchained Soul Lord of Yama hits the board, which I do decide to special recipe because this way, keep them on. Shavara, which is already a huge deal. I think, at least, as my opponent goes to volley away our boards into copy swamp. I was hoping for that to be a good setup for them having Shavara, but here. Opponent goes into another Link monster here, which, looking at the arrows, is going to be SP Little Knight. Kind of praying that they hit the field spell here because I want to keep the Poissonniere in the scales. Because the field spell is not doing a whole lot of immediate pressure. And I do top deck into another restaurant, which does help. Do decide to add back the counter trap here, which is kind of, the main thing you want to do. Opponent goes to Effect Veiler the Diviner, which, I'm personally very confused why I didn't caught by this immediately. Can't chain the Phantom Yubel and kind of, in a position where if the Diviner resolves, I can get going. Either Balaminier or put a Belgrill onto the board, but I do still have the Ritual Imperial here to get things going. Mainly getting a Berea base summoned here, triggering the Diviner in the graveyard with Soul of Yubel. But I'm kind of not fine with that, because I would like to get another Poissonniere out of the deck, even if I'm kind of swimming in those already. But at least I can make sure Berea base resolves. Grabbing a Balaminier, sadly lacking a Ritual spell at the moment. Pop a Spirit of Yubel as I go to target the Berea base. My opponent forgets that I can also chain that to their SP, which immediately lends me a free tag out. Still get the summon of the Potionnaire. Confira is able to unsummon pop the opening of the Spirit Gates, which is kind of, you know, the silly part about Nouvelle. These idiots are like pretty annoying to deal with, especially if you don't completely read the effects. And my opponent is going to find that out the painful way. Opponent goes to Spirit of Yubel, adds another Yubel spell trap here. Yubel floats into Terror and grab a Nightmare Pain off of this Spirit of Yubel. As, you know, I decide to cover back another Ritual here, digging for hand traps, and of course I find one. Just never punished realistically as I turn Berea base and the Poissonnière into a copy of Diner Mondo, putting back the Pelters into my deck and Terror Incarnate on their field, and the field spirit recycling a good bit of resource space as well, which is kind of a cool thing about this deck. Really do like the resource loop of it, you know, the restaurant continuously putting back your spells and your ritual monsters, of course, which you mostly play one-offs of because, you know, you're kind of tagging into those once they get targeted effects. Opponent fires the Nightmare Pain, but before doing anything of importance, we do make a Phantom of Yubel, which I, for a moment, think is still Cold Bite, and therefore do not hit that with a Chef's Special Recipe, which in hindsight, I was real scared at this point, because I was like, okay, cool. From here on out, opponent can just literally go off, do anything they want, and I'm just like, oh cool, yeah, punted this game, you know, what's the worst that could happen? Well, you haven't seen anything yet. Opponent goes to make a cross sheep here, shuffles 2 back once more in a Phantom of Yubel. A cross sheep triggers to bring back the Contract Swamp as they go, and the Grave Squirmer here for a Spirit of Yubel and turning 4 monsters into the Link 4 finisher himself. As you can see by the arrows, it is access code Talker. Not really too happy about that, because my opponent can simply just like access code Talker the Berea base, safely defuse that, and, you know, just doesn't do that. As they go Phantom of Yubel into Berea base, I summon out the Peltis. They decide to go again, and I get a Balaminier out of the deck, and just casually went +2 in a battle phase where I had no business of even, you know, having a board afterwards. Which my opponent probably reads the Nouvelles again and decides to concede here. Which, yeah. It's kind of silly how like how Nouvelles can, like, either playing into a board, because you can, with like the level 3 and higher ones, you can also do this if you're crashing into stuff. But even if your opponent doesn't pay attention, how you can easily just like casually go +3 in a battle phase as if you were Warrock. But yeah, with that, we move into a last and final replay. That is Morphtronics, okay? Before, you know, I get any mean comments about this one. It just fit the theming, okay? And with that, we are once again loaded up and ready to go. We are going first this time. Hand is pretty good. That's a pretty solid hand. Opponent imperms the Salphon, which, like, I'm kind of okay with. This is still a format with Link Karibo Legal, so you're not really throwing like an anima out the window if you are proceeding to make a Link one here, which is kind of nice change. Do go for the repair unit here on the Telephone. Telephone go Salphon here, uncontested pretty much, and Salphon tries to find another guy here, which get that lucky. I decide to turn these two into an IP Masquerader because I want to have the SP summon of the SP, and I'm not passing on a whole lot, as you can see. Ashen Hand, Call By, and then also, you know, the setup for an SP on the opponent's turn isn't the greatest setup. Morphtronics definitely has a lot higher ceiling than this, but we will simply have to bear with it. I do decide to Ash the Samsara the Lotus here, and on the opponent attempting to exit their main phase, I do decide to shotgun the IP here, going for the SP Little Knight, trying to snipe that back row before it passes back to me. Opponent still passes turn, which I'm not too bummed out about in the slightest, as I draw into a converter, which is not doing a whole lot, but at least, you know, it in 16. And I can pass turn back to my opponent, which there's going to be, I think, quite a lot of that. Opponent goes to some Sorority Lotus here, which Grave. I'm just keeping them off of engine because SP Little Knight alone sure as shit is stopping a Yubel combo. So that is, you know, in my best interest. I'm just kind of hoping for a machine here, and the game does reward me with Morphtronic Remote, and is a great one, to be honest. But the Max C is, it's not too great. That. Kind of frightened by what's in store for me now as I go for Remote and for a Telephone here, because I personally... I don't regret the decision to go for, like, Remote and banish the Telephone there, but I felt like I could have just banished the Telephone. Like, been better off because the Telephone's a lot potent on top in the grave. Go for the Converter, grab out another Telephone, bring back the Telephone, and kind of fix my resource game that way. Put an earphone on the board and stick these guys into Imperial Order on 4 legs with an animation now. Go into combat, punching for 16, 22, because I kind of don't want to risk here getting nibbed, which good thing, I guess, because that next draw was a Cyframe Gear Gamma. Kind of just link Koribo for the sake of it here. Keeps him, like, off of just making me lose the body, and I get Link Koribo back on the field. Sadly still losing that smartphone. And what happens next is quite peculiar. Opponent goes to fire Nightmare Throne, which I Naturia Beast. Nothing special here. Opponent goes to fire a Nightmare Pain. I Naturia Beast. Nothing weird here, you know. Them's the breaks. Opponent goes to Opening of the Spirit Gates, which I Naturia Beast once again. Third spell thrown into the Naturia Beast, I'm like, kind of, okay, are you like this low on resources? And then my opponent reveals the fact that they had a Yubel in hand and could have made a Phantom of Yubel the whole time, which, why? Opponent even pops down a second one. Why aren't these ones per turn to make a Super Staff Slayer Typhon going into combat here, as I go for the Link Koribo, which they Spirit of Yubel, which I nicely enough take as an SP Little Knight to save my Naturia Beast for another turn. Also nicely enough gets rid of the Typhon materials, so they don't have a bounce top as set. We get back Typhon and Naturia Beast in end phase, and I draw into Forbidden Droplet. Do decide to equip Morphtronic Earphone here, as they Eternal Favorite, summoning back a Spirit of Yubel. Which makes me kind of scared, because I'm thinking, okay, now they can make Loving Defender forever. But that thing must need, like, Yubel specifically, and Spirit of Yubel isn't a Yubel monster on the field. As I Naturia Beast with the Earphone punch into the face down, and once, you know, I get the damage step of punching into the Typhon, I send the Earphone because I get that second attack, and while the Earphone is equipped to rid myself of that Typhon, my flip a Nightmare Pain, which immediately gets Naturia Beasted, as do all spell cards before the Great Beast of the Forest. My opponent goes to once again shuffle in for a Phantom, and once again I'm questioning why aren't you doing this earlier, but I guess reading is, you know, a common theme in the Yu-Gi-Oh community, especially when you're playing in, like, Silver and Gold. And this time I do rip a top deck that gets me playing again, which is going to be Saffron. But my opponent decides to Baylor the Naturia Beast, and once again finishing off the game is the greatest Link monster ever printed. Can't really go without Underworld Goddess in the best of one format, I think, and with that out. Well, sadly do not have the Machina list anymore, or I think. I need to check. If not, if I do, we will see each other again. Check it. And I still have it. Nothing too special here. This is mainly my current list. Popped out redoxes the ashes for a Machina package of an Unclass Bar, a Fortress, a Metal Cruncher, a Citadel, 3 Deployment, and an Overdrive. This will go pretty well with Tactic Trust, mainly because Trust for Overdrive 1. I think this is a bit overkill in terms of like the Machina portion. I think you could easily shave the Metal Cruncher and possibly Unclass Bar and be just fine, because Unclass Bar locking you into machines is kind of annoying because it locks you out of something like Excelsior Crusaders to make like, Power Tool Braver. So you kind of have to gauge how much you want to run, but this was like an initial draft, which I was like, okay, yeah, I want to jam this silly variant once again and have some fun. Otherwise, yeah, it's like fairly standard official. Don't think now anymore. But with that, I'm moved to Nouvelles list and the other Morphtronics list that you saw in this video. Short cameo from high class French cuisine. Yeah, what's there to say? 3 Diviner, 3 Poissonnaire as your main normal summons, and then as mentioned in the video, most of your rituals are one-offs. I do run a second Berea base, mainly because having a second one is follow-up situations, or just so you avoid drawing it off a pre-prep. It's kind of cute. The rest is just like mainly one-offs, 1 Confira, 1 Peltis, 1 Foie Glacier, and a Balamonier. This is a 3-off simply because this guy adds any Nouvelle card or a recipe card from deck to hand on summon, which is kind of nice. So you do kind of want to make sure that you're making the guy. Then we're playing also Burger and Bale Grill. Otherwise, ritual stuff, you know, there's pre-preps in here, there's archetypal pre-preps in here, there's restaurants in, you know, the cooking deck. Recipe count pretty low. These are very accessible, so I feel like you don't need to play more than like 2-1, because especially once you resolve a fish recipe for a Berea base, you're getting to meat recipe anyways, and then you have an archetypal counter trap. Dynamondo is pretty crazy in this. The second Paticiel is for corner cases where you get like shifted maybe, and the end is for corner cases. Not a whole lot else to explain here, but with that I should really show you guys that last Morphtronic list. This video is getting pretty long. And once again, this time we are looking at the usual, you could say, to stay in Nouvelle terminology. Quick moment. Decided for the last couple of weeks to like throw out Barone, put in Disparter mainly for like science reasons, but I haven't say that like there's a good chance that you can make like Disparter as Baron, which probably can't. But that aside, it is pretty standard stuff you're used to by now. Decided to throw in a Formula Synchron mainly as a replacement for the Baron for now. Usually want this to be a Baron, and this is probably the Formula Synchron, so like this is probably just Baron. But I'm kind of testing with it for like maybe TCG applications, as I think I mentioned last one, which has been quite a bit. But I hope I can get like a more consistent schedule. Weeks. Life has been rough the last weeks, so I hope I can kind of get back into the swing of things, especially over. Made to that, I do want to jump into another long project specifically, which there might be a poll up towards the end of this week, once like at least once like the ban list is dropped at the latest. But yeah, hoping that like maybe Konami doesn't screw me by release today, because upload this on the Wednesday. If it goes up on the Wednesday, there was no ban list today. If it doesn't go up on the Wednesday, there was a ban list on Wednesday, which probably already know by now. But yeah, with all that off the way, I would like to thank you guys very much for watching. Of course, always absolutely this very silly deck and get a very, very respectable. Oh yeah, thank you guys. That way, thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you guys again next time. Until then, goodbye.